Thanks so much, Jake. Good to see you, everybody. This is going to be an exciting session today. We're going to do a deep dive on data and how this works. And I'm going to, oh, you need to let me share my screen, please. I can't do that, apparently. Um, Jake, let me know when that's done. Here we go.
Should be
Cool.
good.
Perfect. Thank you. So today we're going to take a deep dive on data analysis, but I want to take a little step back because a lot of people get confused with Gen AI about the same issue and they struggle understanding what is a context window, and that's going to impact your entire use of Gen AI. So I'm going to take a little bit of time today to do a deep dive, 10, 15 minutes on context window, and I'm going to show you how we address this and how this works to really help you understand kind of the options. So number one, each model, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. Each model has their own context window. And so what is a context window? It's the brain, if you will, of the model that remembers what you say. So it could be in your chat, when you ask a question and get a response back, that context window is kind of the maximum size memory of the model. And if you go beyond that and you keep asking questions, it's going to forget what you ask first. So if you think of a chat and you ask a question, you get a response, you ask again, get a response. If you keep asking, the first question will be forgotten at some point. And each model has different sizes of context window, and new models are getting better and better. So it's becoming less and less of a problem. But I think it's important to understand how this works. So, for example, when GPT came out with GPT 3.5, the model only had 10 pages of context window. That's both the question and the response. So very short brain, if you will. Then, came GPT 3.5 16K. That was 16,000 tokens context window. That's 40 pages, right? So question answers. Um, for your entire chat history, right? So now if we take 4.0, that went up to 128,000 tokens. That's about 300 pages, but it's only a 40 page for the response. So again, if you use a model and you expect an answer more than 40 pages, it's not going to work with that model because that's the maximum the model can produce in one prompt. And the total brain is 300 pages. That means effectively that the entire brain capacity of the model of your data is 300 pages. Now, if you look at more recent models now, with Google, for example, I think they went up all the way to 1 million tokens. O3 Mini is 200,000 tokens. So it's getting better and better and less of a problem. But I think you should really understand how this works. So each model have their limits. Code 3.5 Sonnet is 200,000 tokens, 500 pages of questions, but they also only have, 20 page of response. So again, each model is going to have their limits, and we tell you what the limits are here in this model table. So if I were to show you a couple of examples here, when I ask a question, I send tokens to the model, I get a response back. That costs tokens both for the question and the response. If you also pass a data set, that data set also will cost tokens and take space in that context window. So let's use an example here. I'm going to create a new data set. We're going to call it demo, what is it, 2025 or whatever. So right now it's blank, it's empty, it's only accessible by me, right? So if I upload, let's say, a few files, I'm going to go and take a couple of files here, maybe a case study and a documentation. So if I ingest these two files, they are about, 10, 15 pages each. What happens here behind the scene is the bot reads the text of the PDF, the entire text, and then we cut it into chunks. Each chunk is 500 tokens, about 500 tokens, so about 4,000 characters. So think of like this giant, you could give a 100-page PDF. The system is cutting 500 tokens. Usually we try to cut at the right spot at the end of a sentence or something, so it keeps it consistent. But effectively, each chunk ingested into a data set is, excuse me, is cut by 500 tokens a pop. So in this case, we probably ingested maybe 25 chunks for the 15 pages into the data set, right? So in this data set now, what I have is about 25 chunks. In fact, we can check exactly how many by using this little command here, get results data set, where I can go and see what the bot knows about the different chunks. So this is one chunk, this is another chunk. So again, what happened behind the scene is the bot read the PDF, cut it into chunks, kept the metadata with the page number and the name of the file and all that into the system, which is great. So we can track it, right? And then after that, each of these chunks are stored into this vector database under the data set. Now, when I do a prompt, if I ask something like, what is the case study about? And I pick the data set here that we just did, 2025. So I pick my data set and I ask a question, what is the case study about? So now what's going to happen behind the scene is the bot is going to do semantic search and hybrid text search to take your prompt and find in the data set chunks that match the semantic of this question. So based on your question, the bot is extracting the relevant chunks from the data set. It is not passing the entire data set to the prompt. That would cost too much token and it would run out of space. Instead, what's happening behind the scene here is we're using semantic search to look at your prompt and match relevant chunks from the data set to then give it into your prompt so that the bot has those references here that you see displayed on the screen. And so when you ingest a data set, say with 100 files, you have to understand that obviously if you ask a question, say, how many files are in this data set, that is not going to work, right? Because the bot, in this case, number one, doesn't really understand the concept of files. It's really chunks and contexts. And it's only going to return the top 30, 35 chunks at best. So if you had 1,000 files, right, it's only going to get the top 35 because you're going to run out of context window, and the brain of the model is not capable of handling the entire data set. So what happens in that case is we would, pick 35 chunks and give it to the prompt, and the bot would say, you have 20 files or whatever, right? It wouldn't know that you have a whole bunch of more files that are in the data set that were not shared to the model. So again, I think it's very important to understand how RAG, which is really this data set concept, works. Because if you expect to ingest a bunch of files into a data set and ask very broad questions or counting questions or grouping questions, it's not going to be good if you have too many files, because again, the bot is going to only return the top 35, maybe 50 data chunks from a data set. And that's limited because we don't want to pass too much data and too many tokens into the model with your question, the answer, right? So we need room for the question. We need room for the history of the chat. So if I follow up and I ask a follow-up questions here after, the bot gave me this description here. So let's try this. Here we have, the follow-up gave me, again, a reference here. If, what happens behind the scene here is the first history here is also passed to the model, so the bot knows what the history of the chat is about, and he knows the discussion, the whole. That's why it's always important to start a new chat when you do a new type of work, because you don't want to confuse it with your chat history and what you've been talking about before. So here, as you can see, we have the first question, the first answer, then we have the second question, second answer. If I follow up, again, what's going to be passed to the prompt is my new question, right? So if I do another question here, it's going to take this new question, it's going to pass the history of my chat to the prompt, and is going to pass the relevant chunks from the data set selected based on my last questions. And then we need room for the answer, right? So you have 128,000 tokens to play with. You see it here. That's 128,000 tokens total that you're able to use. But you need to keep in mind that if I keep following up and following up and following up, at some point, my first question is not going to fit anymore, and we're not going to pass it to the bot. And then the bot is going to get confused slowly and slowly because he doesn't remember what the first question was, right? And so I think it's very important to understand how the tokens get handled by Gen AI, because again, it's very confusing and I know very difficult to understand. But you have to think about, you're talking to a model that has a limited brain capacity, and the more you give it, the more it's going to forget at some point. And so you want to get to answers with the least amount of prompts, and ideally in one or two prompts maximum, to get a good quality answer. If you keep following up, there's a chance it's going to get confused. So part of what we hide behind the scene here is we help manage this context window. For example, if you were to attach a file to the prompt, so let's say I take a PDF, right? I'm going to take this Asage versus Nipper GPT PDF comparison here. And if I ask, what is this file about? What's happening here is we pass the entire PDF, we read it in text, and we pass that into the prompt. So if you had a 300-page PDF, obviously you would hit the limit of the model, and it would not be able to analyze more than 300 pages, right? And you need room for the answer, right? So here, as you can see, the file was ingested, and you can see actually what the bot is able to read from the file here, and then it gave me the answer. So in that last prompt, what happened is we attach a file. The file was read by the parser, the PDF parser. It was able to copy that text into my prompt to then ask it what is the file about and get the response back. Now, as you can imagine, if I pass a chat history, if I pass a RAG with a data set, one or two data set, and the more I add to this, the more I run out of tokens that the model can remember. So that's why, if you're not using data sets, you should always put data sets to none here, so you don't waste tokens, and you should only select data sets that are relevant to your question. If you don't use data set, you should put it, at none. And then the question is, how do you achieve outcomes based on different use cases? So let's say I have a 100-page PDF, and I'm trying to get a summary of the PDF. What could you do? You could go into data here and upload the file into the data set. So I could take this, I could pick my PDF, attach it here, and ingest it. That would ingest my 100-page PDF, and it would be accessible with a RAG under my data set. The issue with that is, if I ask something like, a very precise question about a section 12.2 of the document, it's going to do a good job with a semantic search to go to my data set, find the section, and give it back to me as a chunk. And then that's going to be passed to the model. The model is going to respond with the correct answer because it's a very precise question about a section or a question about something precise about the file. Now, if I say summarize the document, that would not work because, again, we're capping RAG at 35 chunks. So if the bot and the file needed the entire file, which is maybe 2,000 chunks of ingested data, only the top 35 would be passed to the model, and the summary would look right, but it would be wrong because it didn't have the entire file. It only had a subset of the file, and it's doing a summary on the subset of the file data. If you actually want to summarize a file, what I would do is I would put dataset to none, and then I would attach the file to the prompt, assuming the file is smaller than the context window of the model. If the file, in this case, it's 128,000 token with GPT-4o mini, that's about 300 pages. If the file is under that, then you're good to go. If the file was 450 pages, it's only going to cut the first 250 pages and do a summary of the 250 pages and not the entire file. So you would not get a good, exhaustive summary of the entire file. So when you attach a file to your prompt, you need to understand the file gets read and passed to the entire prompt. It's almost like if you were to copy and paste the PDF content into your prompt effectively, right? So if I go and take this Nipper GPT PDF here, SH versus Nipper GPT file here, and I open it to show you here what's inside. It's a table comparing stuff. If I were to copy and paste, and I literally take Control A and I copy it to my prompt here, is gonna copy the entire text, is gonna tell me how many tokens that would take to read this file. It's only 676 tokens because, again, this is only one page that was copy and pasted. If I copy the entire thing, you will have to do page by page, or you could select the entire file. So here, again, I think what's super important to understand is if my file is under, say, 250 pages, I can attach it to the prompt and I can say any questions: summarize, extract, give me a bluff, find all the instances of the mentioned helicopter, whatever, right? That would work very well because the bot is passing the entire file to the prompt. It's the same thing as if you are copy and pasting the file into your prompt and asking the question after. Now, what happens with Excel? So we built something pretty cool with Excel and CSVs, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to take a couple of examples here of data files. So we have this user database. It's a bunch of fake user with age and dates and things. What happens if I say, show me users under 30, right? What happened in that use case, we are not sending the Excel to the prompt. We're sending an extract of the Excel, a piece of it. This file has thousands of lines. We're not sending the entire thing. That wouldn't work. That would be beyond the context window of the model. The model would get confused. It would only see 200 lines out of the thousands. That would not work. What we do instead is we have a Python sandbox where instead of asking the bot to read the Excel and analyze it, we ask the bot to write the code to execute the task at hand. In this case, I ask it to be show me the users under 30. So it's extracting all the results of people with age under 30 and is giving me the table back. That is not using Gen AI to analyze the file. That's using Gen AI to write code that we execute to then display the results. The bot never actually read the file. So that would work with thousands of lines. And what you can do with this is actually super powerful. You could say, show me users under 30 and add a column with their birth year and create a pie chart. So what's going to happen here, again, the bot is not reading the file. We do pass it like the top 10 lines, so he knows what's in the file, so he knows the columns, and he knows, the structure of the document, but we're not passing the entire file. And so here, what it did, right, it first filtered by age, it created the birth year new column, and then it created a pie chart with the ages and the department here. So on this table, as you can see, we have this new birth year column that didn't exist. The bot created it. But again, the bot created it in the Python sandbox, ephemeral sandbox, secure sandbox, and was able to effectively run the code, extract the insights, and then display it back on the screen without reading the entire file. And so then you can download it and do whatever you want with it. So super powerful way to analyze Excel, right? If I were to ingest this Excel into a data set, then the bot would get, probably a line per chunks. So let's say you have 250 lines, there would be 250 chunks in the data set. And if you ask a question like, show me all users under 30, it would not work because it would be capped by the maximum number of items we can pass to the RAG, which is about 35 or 50, depending on the model. So effectively, you're capping what the bot can see, and you're not giving it the entire document. If you attach the file to the prompt, then it can see the whole document, assuming it is under the number of pages that the model can analyze in one go. So again, GPT-4o is 128,000 tokens. That's about 300 pages. You need to give room for the answer. Say you have 250 pages of file. That's enough for the bot to analyze it and respond. So now what happens if you have a file that's 1,000 pages and you need to do a summary? If you just needed to ask, let's say you ingest the NDAA 2026 or whatever, right? And you want to ask questions about, a specific section of the NDAA of the budget. That would work very well because it's a precise question. You would put in the RAG, and the RAG would analyze, the 1,000-page file, and then we would use semantic search to find the section, give it back to the prompt, and the bot would give you a great answer to analyze whatever it is you're asking about the section 201 or whatever the number. That would work very well, right? Because it's a file, and it's a precise question about a section of the file. But if you have to ask, show me all programs that impact the US Army, that would not work well, right? Because that would be thousands of results, and it would cap it to 50. And so it would give you the 50, but you have 250 other programs that the bot never got to see. And so that wouldn't work, right? Where so to do that, if you wanted to instead, analyze an entire document and be able to extract or summarize relevant information, we have a plugin for that in the Summarize plugin. And so you would go to Summarize file here, you would put your file, and then you would write a prompt here. Here, the default prompt is to summarize the file. You could also ask it to extract. You could say, extract any information related to helicopters. What would happen in that use case with this plugin is the following. The bot would take the 300-page or 1,000-page document. It would cut it into chunks of 200 pages apart, and it would iteratively execute your prompt per chunks, per sections. So that way, each 250 pages, it would run the prompt, extract the insights, and then it would give you an aggregate answer with the consolidated, answer with all the different iterations. So think of 1,000-page. It would do 4 prompts iteratively, consolidate the 4 answers, and give you the final report. That's what we call an iterative plugin. What that means in a fancy way is that it's iteratively reading the file section by section to extract the insights until it's done, even if the file is bigger than what the model can analyze in one go, because in this case, it's cutting the file to the maximum possible that the brain of the model can handle. So it's cutting it into 250 pages a pop to analyze it iteratively. So that plugin is what you should use when you want to analyze content that is bigger than the context window. When you ask vague questions, extract, broad set of information, summarize. But if you had a very precise question, say about a section or about, a page or a specific topic, then you could use RAG, because RAG is very good at semantic search. It would use semantic search to go and analyze the chunks in the data set and return the relevant results. And then the bot would be able to analyze only the relevant results to give you a good answer. So again, your prompt is what defines what's relevant. If your prompt is vague, then the bot is going to be not good at using semantic search to give you a good answer. If your prompt says, summarize the file, there is no keyword in that, prompt that helps the model use semantic search to extract anything, right? There's nothing here to narrow down the results. But if you were to say, what is the so let's say you ingested 1,000 resumes of 1,000 people. If you say, who is Nic Chaillan, it would use semantic search. It would find my name and it would extract it back, and it would give you a great answer because it's precise, right? There might be 1 or 2 idiots with that name, right? So that's a very good, precise answer. Now, if you were to ask, show me all coders that can code in Python. Well, maybe you have 400 Python coders in there, and the bot would never be able to do it because, again, it would look at the data set, it would find the top 35, and it would stop there and not go look at the 400 others that you're missing in the data set. Because, again, your question is about counting or about something that's too broad for the model to be able to compute, because your question is too broad. If you wanted to run this question about, extracting coders that are Python coders, you have a few ways to do this. Number one, if you have an Excel, you could attach the Excel and you could say, extract all coders that are Python coders, and it would use the Excel and filter and get you a great answer with Excel. If you have a database, which is the better way, so I'll show you here the Sage plugin for Postgres, but we have plugins for other databases too. And I can add my credentials in our FIPS validated secret manager. And so now I can ask questions, right, about my my data. So I could say, show me all my top 5 users consuming the most tokens in March 2025 with last name and country, or first name and country. So if I run this, what happens behind the scene here, and I had my file attached, you probably don't want to do that. So you would have, number one, the bot connect to the secret manager, get the credentials to the database, connect to the database, get the table structure of the data, takes my prompt, convert it to a SQL query, get the raw response for the database from the database, and then makes it pretty in a little table here. So this is effectively real-time data. This is tapping the database and getting the response back. Now I can save it as CSV, or I could say convert this CSV table to a pie chart or whatever, right? So this is real-time data here. So you could, so again, if you wanted to extract, all the Python coders in your database, you could do that with either an Excel file. You could do that here connecting to a database, and the bot would do the query. So again, what happens here? The bot is not reading the database, right? The bot is writing a query based on the table structure of the data by itself, just like a coder would, to extract the response. Then he runs a query, get a response back, and display on the screen. So in this case, the bot acts as a coder, not as a reader, right? It doesn't read the data at all. So that's another way. Another way where you could do that is you could have a CSV file, and you could run our iterative CSV prompting. So in this case, you put your CSV file, Excel CSV, and then you have a prompt. And that prompt is going to be run per line, which can be expensive, by the way. Probably don't always want to do that. But let's say you want to extract very specific information, and you want to do it iteratively, one line at a time. You could say grade this candidate. You could say, grade this proposal. I mean, each line could be graded, extracted, analyzed, summarized, whatever the verb is of the task at hand. You would type your prompt and say, extract, any information related to helicopters from the CSV line, and you leave it like that. And that little code here will pass the line automatically to the prompt, and it's going to run iteratively, one line at a time, run the prompt once per line, get the results per line, aggregate all the responses, and get you the full response at the end. So if you have 1,000 lines, this is going to run 1,000 prompts behind the scene, and it's going to aggregate the response and give it to you. So all this is complex, right? Because obviously you need to understand how RAG and context window work to be able to decide what course of action works best for what kind of data you're trying to analyze. If the file is smaller than your context window and you want to do any kind of work on a file, it's better to attach it to the prompt. Anytime you can, control your prompt and put all the information you need in your prompt, is always going to be better. If it doesn't fit because the file is bigger than your prompt, then if the question is precise, then you would go into a data set. Now, if the question is vague and it's about counting or grouping or extracting insights about a vague topic that covers the entire file, then you're probably better using the summarization plugin to iteratively extract insights section by section with a summarized file plugin. So I know this is, complex. It gets even harder when you start adding live data. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go to GPT-3.5, which was trained in 2021, and I say, who is the governor of Arkansas? It's going to be wrong, right? Because there was an election since the model was trained and it doesn't know, right? So that's wrong. Now, if I run it again, but I put live now with a little globe here, what's going to happen here is the bot is going to convert my prompt to a search query to Bing. It's going to then find the top 10 results, but it's also going to take the top 2 pages here, and it's going to summarize each the top 2 pages, and then is going to use that training into the prompt to help answer the question. And now, as you can see, it is right. Because now it's not just using the data from the model, it's using the data from Bing and the websites. In fact, you see the references here. And that's how the bot knows who is the governor, right? And you have the date and all that. So this is a great tool to do market research or extraction. In fact, we have a new feature that's coming in the next couple of weeks called Deep Agent. And that's gonna be, it's kind of a similar feature as OpenAI Deep Search, where the bot is acting as a researcher and it's running a bunch of prompts behind the scene to extract relevant insight, gather data, gather information, analyze it, take action, give you a better response, and do kind of all this work behind the scene. You type one prompt, but the bot is doing a whole bunch of work behind the scene to act as a researcher or as a coder fixing a bug or complex tasks. And so we built a version of that's going to be on Ask Sage as well. No extra cost, same license. And you're going to be able to activate the mode Deep Agent, and the bot is going to go search either the web or your data sets. And so say you have ingested a bunch of data in your data sets, the bot can now do that research for you and iteratively go collect data both from your live web search, but also from your data set, and aggregate the response and get you a cool answer. So this is pretty powerful, and that's going to be launched in a couple of weeks. So looking at Deep Agent, that's right, Matthew. When it comes to multiple documents, right? So I know Jared was asking, what if I have a bunch of documents? So number one, we're gonna have a new update where you're gonna be able to attach more than one file to the prompt in the next few weeks. So you're gonna be able to attach 2, 3, 4 files. Now, keep in mind, you're still limited, and that's why I didn't want to do it, right? That's why I didn't want to put this feature, because I know people get confused. When you attach a file, it's very unlikely the file is going to be more than 300 pages, which is the maximum, of the model, right? 4.0, which is our default 300-page context window. So if you attach one file, it's unlikely the file is going to be more than 300 pages. If you attach 2, 3, 4 files, now, if you have a file that's 20 page, 50 page, 70 page, 80 page, the chance of the total being more than what the model can handle is very high. And so, yes, we're going to be allowing you to attach multiple files. But you need to keep in mind in the back of your head that if you do, you can't, just put a bunch of files and it's going to read it all, because it's going to be capped by the maximum of the model can handle, right? And so it's going to cut the text of the files. And that's not great, right? If you need to analyze multiple files, you would create a data set, you will upload the 5 files, and if you have precise questions, it's going to do a good job, right? Because it's a precise question. But if you were to ask, summarize the 5 files, that's not going to work. Okay, that's not how you should do it. If you want to summarize 5 files, you have to do 1 file at a time, or use our API to automate it, right? You can't do it. You can't just put in a data set and ask it to summarize 5 files. The question is too vague. There is no way for the Gen AI to bring all of this data back to the prompt using semantic search. So, we're gonna have you sure you want to upload multiple files, it's interesting, right? And feel free to ask questions on the chat here, if you have any questions. Jared was asking, how do you use the API? So a few things. One is we have our entire documentation on docs.asksage.ai. I'll put it on the chat here. I put it just to me and the panelists. I need to put it to everyone. So here we go. So that's the website you want to go to see all the documentation of everything we do is there. As you can see, we have the API, and we walk you through how to create an API key and how to use the API. We have a Python client, we have a VS Code extension, we have a whole bunch of stuff. But you can create an API key, and that's a paid fee. You need to have a paid subscription for SH, obviously. And then you can use the API. And you could loop through your files and automate that. And that's what I do often when I have, say I have 200 files. I need to summarize it. I'm not gonna go one at a time and do it by hand. I would use all API Python client here, and you have a function here called train with file, or that's to train a data set, or you could query with file, and that's where you would do a summarize prompt, and you would attach a file, and it would iteratively run through each file one at a time, and it would get you the summarization from the API standpoint. So I'm trying to look at some of the questions here. Matthew was asking, can in-a-box help with larger data sets with multiple files? In-a-box would extract relevant information from your files about a topic. So say you're doing an ATO package with ATO in a box. ATO in a box would extract anything relevant to cyber from each file. In fact, what's happening in the background is we read each file and we run prompt iteratively to extract what's relevant about cyber or whatever task you're doing to iteratively analyze your files. So we extract it, so then we have a subset of the insight that is then used to train the bot to respond to the ATO questions, right? So ATO in a box is great to help you extract insights from your files. You could do workbook, right? So workbook is also part of SH. You could literally go to a workbook and attach a bunch of files, but it's the same as a data. I mean, at the end of the day, if your files are bigger than what the model can handle, there's no magic here, right? The bot is trying to make it we try to make it as easy as possible for you, but we're limited by the context window of the model. What's pretty amazing is you look at Gemini 2.0 Flash that came out from Google a few months ago now, and we got it on the Army R5 tenant, by the way. I created at R5. That model has a median token context window. That's amazing. That is probably 2,500 pages of context that it can handle. That's amazing. But keep in mind, each model also have limit of how much they can output. A lot of people send us email and say, oh, I'm asking questions, and it's only sending me a piece of the response back because, the models are capped, by the models. So Gemini, I think, is, I forgot, I think it's probably 20 pages output. So you can put 1,000-page input, but you can only have 20-page output. So if your output is, huge, it's going to cut it. And then you have to say, continue. That's just not great, right? But that's the way the models work. Nothing we can do on our side to fix it. Again, what we find is models are expanding their context window, just like Gemini is now a median token. That's input. Output is still pretty limited because they find that output gets confused and wrong and lesser quality if you wait, the longer it gets. And so they cap it to 20, 40 pages. That's it, right? So if you need to generate, if you let's say you have a book, right? And you wrote a book and you want to make a kindergartner version of it. So you have a 1,000-page book, and you attach it. You want to convert it to a kindergarten version. That would not be easy to do because you would have to do section by section, maybe chapter by chapter, right? Because again, the output you need to get the same volume output as input. So GPT-4o Mini is 40-page output. So you would do 40 pages at a time, right? You couldn't do better than that. Stephen was asking, is SH available on Zipper and JWix? We have ongoing deployments now on with the Air Force on top secret that we're working on with ACC and Army is doing a separate deployment of Ice now. I just started. We think it's going to be up. We already got the ATO. I think it's going to be up in about 2 months at best. We can deploy anywhere you want. Ice Army is going to provide it to Army users, and Air Force is going to provide it to the DAF. So it's going to be, each team has to fund, I guess, their token consumption. So, Emil was asking, can I use Sage to integrate data from various systems and structure the data to run queries? Yes. So this is a great question, right? So we had an engagement with DEA. Great CIO. Nick is amazing. They have 7 case management systems with different data formats, JSON, XML, junk in the freaking XML in JSON and JSON in XML. I mean, it was just a disaster. No structure, completely a nightmare. And they wanted to consolidate the 7 different data sources, right, to one. And what we did with Sage is we had a connector to each of the 7 systems, and we gave the structure of each system to Sage. So showed the example of data for one result, and then we say, hey, looking at these results, create a flattened data structure for my data, so we can consolidate and aggregate and merge and flatten this data into a single Elasticsearch schema. And the bot was able to create the schema, create parsers for each of the 7 systems, so they can convert the legacy data to the new data with a basic Python script, and then iteratively go through each result to do the conversion, and then push it to Elastic, all in a day. What would have taken maybe 20 years for those guys to do with coders. So that was amazing. So yes, you can integrate to legacy systems, build connectors, and ingest data, whatever, if it's structured and unstructured data, and then convert it to whatever new format would be. So people have built connectors to ERPs, Salesforce types, legacy types, more like the Oracle, older, EDB systems, SQL Server databases, GitLab, GitHub. I mean, you can pull from pretty much anything that has either a database or API or whatever. So, and then Sam Fisher was asking, can I use Sage to integrate with sources like Jira, Lucid, and Microsoft 365? So yes, you can build a connector. We have already a lot of them. We don't have Jira and Lucid yet. We could build it, for you, or you could build it yourself, but we can build it too. If there's a lot of demand for a plugin, a connector, we do it for free. If there's not, we need some funding, but we try to do as much as we can for free. We did, OneDrive, Elastic, MongoDB, SharePoint, and so on. So you could connect to SharePoint. You need to make sure the API, of course, is allowed. Some DoD systems block the API, and so you have to connect, right? We can solve the connection magic. They have to let us connect to it. So you need an authority to connect first, to connect to the system, and then if we can connect, then you can obviously tap the API to connect. Jira is pretty easy, I would say. Confluence, all that, easy. I don't know Lucid too much, but I'm sure that would be not rocket science. So yeah. So how hard is it to build a connector? What does the setup requires, and how many teams and time does it take? Depends on the connector. A SQL connector is like 2 hours for us. Usually the bot knows if it's a commercial thing like Jira, Confluence, the API is already known by the bot. So it's so much easier, right? Because it's not a government shadow IT nonsense. It's a well-known product already. The documentation is already ingested by the LLMs. So that's super easy, right? We actually use Sage to build the connector, right? So we don't have to do it by hand. I mean, most connectors is under a day. So, cost-wise, it's, $5,000 top, nothing insane. Could be much less if it's easy. And again, if we see demand for it, we do it for free. If there's a lot of demand for it, not a problem. Then to set it up, the way this works, if I show you the example here with Postgres, You have a connector here. We tell you the secret format. So, Asage has a FIPS validated secret manager to store the credentials to the databases, right? So that's why you see here all my databases, right? The format is pretty simple for Postgres. It's this: you put the username, the password, the URL, the name of the database, the version of the Postgres server, which table it has access to. So you only allow which table, and it's a read-only access where you would not give, crazy access to the bot here. And then you have a field to guide the bot if there's fields that are confusing or names that are not clear. So as you can see here, I gave a couple of examples to say use created at to find when the user signed up, use paid to find out when the user is paid. That's probably redundant. It's just a demo here. If a field is named a weird name, and it's not clear, you probably want to explain what the field does so the bot is going to be able to write the queries and understand what each field is about in the database. So when you create your secret, you would use /add secret. That's a command on the chat, and you would just create your secret, and then it would appear here on the list. So all you need to do is have an account, a read-only account on the database side, and we need to make sure the connection can flow between, Asage and the database to connect. So it's pretty simple. It's not easy, but not rocket science. So, and it's super powerful, right? Because the beauty with databases, I'll show you another example here. If I go back to my Postgres, it puts your data at your fingertip. This stuff is so powerful. That's how we use, when I have questions about my business, that's where I go. I don't go and go to QuickBooks or whatever. I go and ask questions to Asage. So I could say, show me the most used models in March 2025 with their respective counts. So let's say I want to see, what models you guys use the most this month, right? So I literally, got my data right here. I can see, okay, 4 mini is the most used. That's normal. That's a default model, right? So again, super easy, right? To extract and get insight. Your data is right there. The bot is able to write a query. What we do is if the query doesn't work and there's an error message, we ask the bot to self-reflect and fix its own mistake. And so it's able to look at the error message and fix its own freaking mistake, and then try to fix the query and try to run it again. And we do that twice, and then we give up. But it's a great way to see, the bot learning and kind of fixing its own mistake in coding, and just fix the query. So super powerful. Keep in mind Asage as image generation with DALL-E, image review with Gemini, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and 4.0 and 4.0 Mini to analyze an image. We have speech to text to convert speech to text. So you can attach an MP4 and ask, what is the content about. You can also use a plugin for text to speech. So in which case you can pick, the voice desired, and there's different style, and you can just, write, the text you want to generate in audio, and the bot is going to generate it.
This is a test.
And here we go. And you can download the audio, and you can, try different voices and let it generate it and play it and whatnot.
This is a test.
There we go. So super cool. Text to speech, speech to text. Sky's the limit with Asage ready. We know all this is complex. We know, and part of the deep agent feature we're gonna be releasing is to help people automate tasks that are complex, where the bot is gonna try to cut work, right? So it's like you have this complex task. If you cut it into steps, right, that makes it more doable. And so the bot is going to try to do that automatically. And, it's a very complex thing we're building here to automate research and work. And I think it's going to be super cool. Probably going to be released in a couple of weeks. We're testing it now. It's going to be in beta. You're going to be able to test it. Be careful with that feature because it's going to use more tokens. Because again, one prompt can lead to a research and can take 10, 20 minutes to go step by step and analyze things. And it's going to cost more prompts, but I think it's super powerful too. And you would save a month of research in an hour, right? So I love it. But you have to use it wisely and not do a bunch of nonsense. So hopefully that was helpful. I know we're almost out of time. If you have any questions, we do more training sessions every month, every 2 weeks, really. Watch our videos on YouTube. You have it right here on the help section here. It's on YouTube as well. Look at the documentation. Reach out to us if you have questions at support@AskSage. And Matthew, we do have image generation already. So it's DALL-E. So if you pick DALL-E here, V3, for example, and I say, create an image of a dog and a donkey or whatever, the bot is able to do that. So we do have image generation already and image recognition too. So you could attach a PNG to GPT-4o and it can analyze what the image is automatically. So you could attach, a screenshot or whatever image and ask it to analyze it for you. So yeah, so Matthew, if you're on the R5, that is not authorized at R5 outside of the Army tenant. So for people that are on Nipper, and that's only for people on Nipper, you can use this link here I'm going to put on the chat. That has all the models there. This is chat.sage.ai. That's the L2 FedM High tenant. You can use that for, non-L5 data, I guess. But the chat.genai.army.mil, that's the Army tenant. It's actually accessible to anyone in DoD. And it has image recognition, speech to text, text to speech, all of the models, all there. Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, super cool, from the Army CIO that accredited all these models. He's the first to do this. Super cool. So try it out, and hopefully that was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, shoot us an email. Support@AskSage.ai. I'll put it on the chat here. We will help you as much as we can. This context window stuff is a nightmare. I get it, but we're trying to abstract it and make it as easy as possible. But it is insane. And keep in mind, we also release Code Canvas and Prose Canvas. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. Let us know what you think. We have VS Code extension, JetBrains extension. So Code Canvas is super cool. You can code in the UI here, and then Prose Canvas is more like a WYSIWYG. You can write text, and underline, or ask it to fix your content and whatnot. And you can type, and then you can also ask it to fix your text. So it's kind of pretty cool, new feature as well. So check it out. I hope you love all the stuff we keep adding. We release 5 times a day. It's super cool. If you have any ideas, new features, reach out to us, give us ideas. We love it. And wanted to thank everybody again for the time.